The decision to hike into the Blackwood Pines was Mark's idea, a final trip for our group of 5 friends before life scattered us to different cities and careers. There was Mark, the charismatic and fearless leader; Chloe, the ever-skeptical photographer; Liam, the pragmatic planner who packed for every conceivable disaster; Sophia, the gentle soul who loved stargazing; and me, Alex, just along for the ride and the camaraderie. We found a perfect clearing deep within the old-growth forest, a flat, soft patch of earth beside a slow-moving, crystal-clear creek. The air was sweet with the smell of pine and damp soil, and for the first few hours, it was idyllic. We set up our 2 tents, built a sturdy fire pit, and laughed as the sun dipped below the canopy, plunging our world into a deep, velvety blue. The first night, the silence woke me. It was absolute. The forest had gone dead quiet. No insects, no rustling of nocturnal creatures, nothing. And then, cutting through that void, came a sound. It was a melody, faint and distant, someone whistling. It was a tune I didn't recognize, cheerful yet somehow off, like a music box slowing down. I lay frozen in my sleeping bag, listening. It seemed to circle our camp, never getting closer, never fading further away. I convinced myself it was a trick of the wind or a distant bird, though some deep, primal part of my brain knew it was neither. The next morning I mentioned it cautiously. Liam and Mark dismissed it, but Chloe's face went pale. She had heard it too. She described the exact same tune. We agreed it was strange, but decided to brush it off, attributing it to fatigue or a shared auditory hallucination brought on by the profound silence. The second day was spent hiking deeper into the woods, following a trail that seemed less and less traveled. The atmosphere felt heavier, the trees denser, as if they were closing in behind us. That night the whistling returned. It was closer now, much closer. The melody was the same, but the tempo was wrong, sometimes too fast, sometimes agonizingly slow, with pauses that felt like a predator holding its breath. We all heard it this time. We huddled around the fire, its light doing little to push back the oppressive darkness beyond the trees. Mark, trying to be brave, shouted into the night, "Who's out there?" The whistling stopped instantly. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying. Then, from the trees just beyond the firelight, a voice echoed back. Not a shout, but a whisper that carried with unnatural clarity. It mimicked Mark's exact words, "Who's out there?" But it was wrong. The cadence was a perfect mimicry, yet the tone was hollow, devoid of any human warmth. Panic set in. We threw more wood on the fire, creating a roaring blaze that made the shadows dance maniacally. No one slept. We sat back to back, staring into the impenetrable blackness, listening. The whistling did not return that night, but we felt a presence, a patient, watching malice. The next morning, Sophia was gone. Her sleeping bag was empty, the zipper of our tent still closed from the inside. There were no footsteps, no signs of a struggle. It was as if she had simply evaporated. We called for her until our voices were hoarse, but the forest swallowed our cries. We packed our gear in a frantic, silent rush, deciding to get out immediately. As we did, we found one of Sophia's hair clips on the ground near the fire pit. It was broken in 2. Next to it, pressed into the soft earth, was a single bare human footprint. It was small, like a child's, but with long, grotesquely twisted toes. We ran, abandoning any pretense of following the trail, simply moving in, the direction we hoped was out. The forest seemed to shift around us, familiar landmarks now gone, the path we swore we came in on now leading to a dead end of thorns. And the whistling began again. It was all around us now, no longer trying to hide its proximity. It was above, us in the trees behind us, in front of us. We ran until our lungs burned, until Liam tripped over a root and twisted his ankle badly. We had to stop. As we tried to help him, we saw it. Between the trees, maybe 50 yards away, a figure stood perfectly still. It was unnaturally tall and thin, its limbs too long for its body, its skin a pale grayish white, that stood out against the dark bark. Its head was tilted at an impossible angle and it had no face, just smooth skin where its features should be. And it was whistling that same horrible, cheerful tune. We dragged Liam, half crying, half screaming, as the thing began to move. It didn't walk or run. It glided, its legs not moving, just shifting silently through the undergrowth, keeping pace with us effortlessly. We were exhausted, disoriented, and utterly lost. The thing was hurting us. It wasn't trying to catch us. It was driving us deeper into the heart of the woods. We stumbled into another clearing, not ours, but one containing the ruins of an old, collapsed cabin. And in the center of the clearing, sitting on a moss-covered log, was Sophia. She was rocking back and forth, her eyes wide open but seeing nothing, staring at some point in the infinite distance. She was humming the tune. The whistling behind us stopped. We turned. The tall, thin figure was gone. But from the trees all around the clearing, dozens of pairs of eyes began to glow in the dim light. And one by one, figures, just like the first, but some smaller, some larger, emerged from the shadows. They stood silently, watching. They had been waiting for us. They had been waiting for a very, very long time. Elijah, Ben, and I, Rachel, had been camping in the Whispering Fjord since we were teenagers. But this trip felt different from the start. A thick, soupy fog had rolled in from the mountains, muffling all sound and reducing our world to a small, gray bubble around our tent. We were experienced, we knew these woods, but the fog played tricks on the mind, distorting distances and making familiar trees look like monstrous waiting figures. We'd set up camp on a high ridge, a spot we'd used before that offered safety, and a stunning view, though now the view was a wall of featureless gray. The first sign something was wrong was the voices. We heard Ben calling for help, his voice laced with panic, coming from the fog about 100 yards to the east. The problem was Ben was standing right next to us, his face ashen with confusion. "That's not me," he whispered, his voice trembling. The voice called again. "Elijah. Rachel, help me. I'm stuck. I fell." It was perfect. The slight rasp he gets when he's scared, the specific cadence of his speech. It was Ben, but it wasn't. Elijah gripped his hunting knife. "Stay here," he ordered, and moved toward the sound. Ben and I waited, the silence pressing in on us, the fog seeming to absorb our very breath. After a few minutes, Elijah returned, his face grim. "Nothing there," he said. "No sign of anyone, no broken branches, nothing." We tried to rationalize it, a trick of the wind, an echo from some other part of the mountain. But the dread was already coiling in our guts. That's when we heard my voice, from the other side of the camp. "Guys, I found something. You need to see this." It sounded so real, so utterly like me, laced with excitement and a hint of fear. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. I hadn't spoken. The rest of the day was a nightmare of auditory torture. The thing in the fog learned. It started with our calls for help, then it began mimicking our conversations from earlier in the day, playing them back from different directions, sometimes getting the words slightly wrong, which was somehow worse. It mimicked the sound of our campfire crackling, the zip of our tent door, the clink of our water bottles. It was studying us, learning the sounds of our existence to better lure us out. We decided our only option was to wait it out, to stay put until the fog lifted. We huddled in the tent, the three of us back to back, listening as the mimicry continued outside. It started whispering things it shouldn't know. It whispered Ben's childhood nickname that only his late father used. It whispered the secret fear I had confessed to Elijah years ago in confidence. It was pulling our deepest, most personal memories from our minds and weaponizing them. As night fell, the fog grew thicker and the thing grew bolder. We could hear footsteps circling the tent, heavy, dragging steps that didn't sound human. Then a scratching started on the nylon fabric of the tent, long, slow rasps that traveled from the roof down to the ground. We held each other, too terrified to even scream. Then Elijah's voice right outside the tent flap whispered, "Hey, let me in." I got lost in the fog, but I found my way back. It's really me. We knew it wasn't. We could see Elijah's shadow sitting between Ben and me, shaking with silent sobs. The thing outside sighed, a perfect imitation of Elijah's disappointed sigh. "Fine," it said. "Have it your way." The scratching stopped. The footsteps retreated. For a moment there was blissful, terrifying silence. Then the screaming started. It was Ben's voice, but amplified. A sound of pure, unadulterated agony that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was the sound of someone being torn apart. Ben clamped his hands over his ears, rocking back and forth, tears streaming down his face. Then it was my voice screaming, then Elijah's. The thing was playing a symphony of our own imagined deaths. The sounds reached a crescendo, and then stopped abruptly. In the silence, we heard a new sound, a low, wet, gurgling laugh that bubbled up from the ground beneath our tent. The floor of the tent bulged upward slightly as if something was pushing against it from below. The earth itself was laughing at us. We couldn't take it anymore. We unzipped the tent flap and ran blindly into the fog, away from the horrible laughter. We ran until we collided with trees, until thorns ripped at our clothes and skin. We had no idea where we were going. Suddenly we saw a light ahead, a warm yellow lantern light. A figure stood holding it, an old man in a park ranger's uniform. "Over here," he called, his voice rough but kind. I heard the screams. "This way, quickly. The fog plays tricks. You're safe now." Relief flooded through us. We stumbled toward salvation. As we got closer, I saw his face was kind, etched with concern. He reached out a hand. "Come on, kids, let's get you out of this damn fog." I reached for his hand, and that's when I noticed his eyes. They were solid, glossy black, like obsidian, reflecting not our images, but a swirling, hungry darkness. And his smile, which had seemed so warm, now stretched a little too wide, showing a few too many teeth, all of them sharpened to fine points. He wasn't leading us out. He was just another part of the trap. The fog hadn't been hiding the monster. The fog was the monster. Our research team was deep in the Amazon basin, further than any sensible person would go. Dr. Eris Thorne, the lead biologist, was obsessed with finding evidence of a supposedly extinct species of arboreal primate. There was myself, David, a geologist, Lena, a botanist, and Marcus, our guide. The jungle was a living, breathing entity, loud and teeming with life. For the first week, it was exhilarating. Then we entered a region the local guides had refused to take us to, a place they called the sleeping place and crossed themselves when mentioning. The change was subtle at first. The constant noise of the jungle began to fade. The birdsong stopped. The monkeys fell silent. The only sound was the drip of water from the colossal leaves high above and the hum of insects. But even that felt muted, respectful. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than houses, their canopies so high they blocked out the sun, creating a perpetual twilight on the forest floor. We made camp at the base of the largest tree I've ever seen. It was like a wooden skyscraper, its roots forming great walls and arches. That night we heard the first sounds, not from the ground but from above. A faint, rhythmic clicking, like two stones being tapped together. Then a soft, rustling drag, like something heavy, being pulled across the broad branches high above us. We shone our powerful torches upward, but the beams were swallowed by the immense darkness, revealing nothing. Dr. Thorne was ecstatic, convinced it was his primates. The rest of us were uneasy. The sounds continued every night, growing gradually, louder, closer. We started finding things on the forest floor in the mornings. Strange, twisted sculptures made of woven twigs, bones, and feathers, arranged in patterns that made no sense and hurt the eyes to look at for too long. They were placed in a perfect circle around our camp. Marcus, our guide, wanted to leave. He said the things in the trees were not monkeys. He said they were older than the trees themselves, that they were watchers, and we were trespassing in a gallery that was not meant for our eyes. Dr. Thorne dismissed him as superstitious. On the fourth night, the sounds changed. The clicking became more complex, a form of communication, and we realized it was answering itself, coming from multiple points in the canopy. We were surrounded. Then the fruit began to fall. Rotten, pulpy fruit from the high branches raining down on our tents, splattering them with a foul-smelling juice. It was targeted. It was deliberate. We broke camp at first light, Dr. Thorne protesting the entire time, furiously taking notes on the remarkable territorial behavior. We tried to retrace our steps, but the jungle behind us had changed. Vines had grown over our path in impossible time. Fallen trees now blocked our way where there were none before. It was hurting us, just like the Whistler had done to the other group. We were being driven deeper into its heart. That's when we saw them. Not fully, just glimpses. A long, multi-jointed limb, pale and smooth, retracting into the leaves. A flash of a large, dark eye, blinking slowly from a crevice in a tree trunk high above. They moved with a silent, fluid grace that was utterly alien. Marcus, in a panic, fired his rifle into the air. The report was shockingly loud in the silent forest. For a moment, everything was still. Then the jungle erupted. From above, a chorus of shrieks, unlike any animal we knew, echoed through the trees. It was a sound of pure, rageful intelligence. Things began to drop from the canopy. Not to attack us, but to block our path. They were more of the twisted sculptures, but these were larger, more complex, and incorporated things that made my blood run cold. They had used Lena's stolen hairbrush. They had used pages from Dr. Thorne's journal. They had used the lens from my compass. They knew what our tools were. They knew what was important to us. They were mocking us. We ran, leaving everything behind but the clothes on our backs. We ran until we found a small cave in a rock face, and we scrambled inside, huddling together in the dark, listening to the things moving in the trees outside. They did not try to enter. They just waited. We are still in the cave. It has been 2 days. Our food and water are gone. We can see them sometimes, just at the edge of the tree line. They are tall, their bodies unnaturally slender and jointed, designed for a life spent high in the branches. Their skin is a mottled gray and green like lichen-covered bark. Their faces are the worst. They have no mouths, just large, black, liquid eyes that observe everything with a cold, ancient curiosity. They don't want to eat us. They don't seem to want to hurt us at all. They just watch. They watch us get weaker. They watch our hope die. They collect things we drop, a button, a strand of hair, a scrap of foil from a protein bar, and take them back up into the trees.